Hey, what's up, Hamza? This is a personal teaching video I recorded just for you in lieu of our typical tutoring session. And if you remember from what we've been talking about recently, one of the things that you probably need the most practice with and the most remediation with is this kind of challenging situation where you have three equations, a system that has three equations that have three variables, and you have to solve for all three. And so I wanted to give you another video to follow up and reinforce what we were talking about and also give you some more practice with that skill. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, much like we would do if we did a typical tutoring session. And I want to pull up an example of a system of equation that has three equations and also has three variables, right? So if you remember from class, hopefully you remember that when you do this, you got to start with picking two equations and really doing the elimination method and whittling it down, if you will, to just having two variables instead of three, right? And so as a general protocol, what you want to do is identify one of the variable terms that you want to eliminate, right? So if I look at these first two equations on this example, I would target the y's, right? Because as you see, the y's are already in a state of elimination, right? You got a positive 4y, you got a negative 4y. If I added those two together, you would get the y's to eliminate, right? And so I'm going to use those first two as our first example so you can kind of see my logic there, right? We're taking the first two equations, so I'm going to temporarily, I'll tell you what, it might be easier. Let me try this if this works. I'm going to put, I'm going to maybe block part of this just to make my point. And then you'll be able to kind of focus as far as watching the video. So let's say we have the first two equations. I'm going to kind of cover that up with a little text box, right? And then we're just going to do the elimination method to whittle it down like I was saying a second ago, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to just simply add the two equations together, equation one and equation two. If you do that, you'll notice the y's eliminate in that case. Add them up, you'll be having you'll be left with 6x if you look at this one, and then if you add up the z's, you'll have 2z, and then if you add up the constants, that's a z, by the way, kind of ugly looking, you're going to end up equaling 24. Okay, so that's what happens if you take the first two equations and add them together. So what we want to do in this situation is we kind of want to store this. Okay, you want to put it on the shelf, if you will, just for a minute, because we're going to come back to it. So I'm going to put it over here to the side. 6x plus 2z is equal to 24. Okay, we're going to do that, and then we're going to kind of back it up from there. So now that you did the first two equations, let me just erase this and see what we can do here. I'm kind of figuring this out as I record it, right? But if you erase that and go back to the original, you now want to incorporate that bottom equation, right? We did the first two, but we didn't really do the third equation yet. So we're going to do the same process, but this time we want to add up maybe equation one and equation three, or you can even do equation two and equation three, but you want to include equation three, the last row that you see there when you do it this time. Now, if it's me, I'm picking equation one again, and I'm going to add that to equation three because it's already easy to eliminate the y's, right? If you take a look at that, you have a positive 4y again and a negative 4y. So if you add up those, it's going to eliminate rather easily, right? So I'll go ahead and do like I did a second ago. I'll cover up temporarily, right? I'm going to cover up the middle equation so that doesn't distract you as far as the video is concerned, right? And then we're going to add up these two equations that you see, equation one at the top and equation three at the bottom, and get another two variable equation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to draw, change out my writing, and then of course we're going to add these up. Okay, so we did it once to the first equation and the second equation. Now we're going to do the first equation and the third equation. If you add those up, once again, the y's eliminate, and it's important to eliminate the same variable for both, okay? If you eliminate the y's when you did the first round, you want to make sure you're still going for the y's to eliminate when you do the second equation. Just thought I'd mention that. So that's going to equal 9x if you do 4x plus 5x, and that's going to equal negative 4z, I believe, yeah? And then if you add up the constants, in this case, you're going to end up with 36. when you do it to the first equation with the third equation. So once again, and we're going to shelve this, put it out to the side, and then we're going to come back to it in just a second. But you want to do it a couple times and narrow it down to having 2 variables instead of 3 variables like it originally had. Okay, so we got our 2 new equations that only had 2 variables. Now we're in a situation where we should be able to basically solve for at least one of these variables. You got to do, kind of a good bit of prep work, if you will, is what I like to call it, before you can really get going with these 3 system equations. Okay, so if you take a look at what we have left on the right in red, you'll notice you have 2 equations with 2 variables. Okay, I'm just going to go back to my drawing icon, right? But if you look at these, I'm talking about these right here. If you look at what you had there, you'll notice you can't really eliminate any of those variables the way that it currently is. You can't eliminate the x's or the z's the way it is. So that's when you have to look for a multiplier, right? They're already opposite. If I target maybe the z's here, right? You have a positive at the top and -4 right at the bottom. So the easiest thing to do, I suggest do the easiest thing, is just multiply the top equation, in this case, by a multiplier, so that it'll become positive 4z, and then they will eliminate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. That's going to make it, 12x plus positive 4z. That's what we want, so we can get the elimination effect to occur, right? And then 2 times 24, that should be 48. The bottom equation, we don't really need to change in this particular example, so I'm going to leave it as 9x minus 4z. I'm not going to change that one whatsoever. It's going to stay exactly the same, okay? And that'll equal 36. Feel free to watch this video replay several times if you need to, right? But now we're in a state where we can do the elimination method, if you will, with this 2 equation, 2 variable situation. Well, if I add up these, the z's will eliminate. That's a good thing, because now I can solve for x. 12 plus 9x, I think that is, I'm just doing this in my head fast. That should be 21x, I believe. Check me on that, but I think that's right. And then 48 plus 36, let's see, 8, 6, 14. Carry the thing. I think that's going to be 84, right? And so you're going to have 21x equals 84. But now that you got it down to that state, you can simply solve by dividing both sides by 21. And I believe that's going to be 4 on the nose. Okay. 81 divided by, yeah, that should be 4 on the nose. Okay. So x equals 4. Okay, we did all that work, and I know it's a lot. That's why we're staying at it for a little longer. We did all that work just to find out what one of the variables is. We now know that x equals 4, okay? So how can we use that as a key to kind of unlock the rest of the variables? Well, you can go back to any one of the original, one of the original 2 variable equations. So I would probably pick that one, or maybe the original one, but you want to pick the one that has 2 variables so that you can actually solve for it. Don't pick the one that has 3. Don't pick like these. That won't be solvable. You want to start with the 2 variable one. So I'm going to pick the 9x minus 4z equals 36 as an example. You could also use the 6x. It doesn't really matter, but I think I'll use that one. So instead of saying 9x, I'll replace the x with 4, since now I know that x equals 4. And everything else will look exactly the way it is, okay? I'm picking one of those equations that I came up with earlier, and so it looks like this, right? Well, 9 times 4, we know is really 36. So we're going to change that to 36 minus 4z equals 36, okay? And then we're just working our equation solving skills from here on out, right? How do you get this solved? Well, that's a positive 36. Do the inverse. Minus both sides by 36. And so probably is going to end up equaling 0 here, based on what I'm seeing. Yeah, because you're going to have -4z equals 0. If you divide both sides by -4, like you should, that's going to leave you with z equals 0. Okay, that's supposed to be a z. It looks really bad. It looks like a 2 equals 0, but let me see if I can do better than that. I don't know. Oh, that's even worse, guys. But that's supposed to be a z. I'm going to see if I can fix that. That's just really bad looking, isn't it? Sometimes writing on this screen can be a challenge. Boom, boom, boom. Is that a little better? Okay, so now we have 2 of the variables. Now you might be wondering, now that I know x is 4, and now that I know z equals 0, how can I use that to find out y? Well, you guessed it. pick any one of the equations above and solve. You might want to pick the middle one. You know, the numbers look a little smaller. Maybe it'll save you some time. I don't know. You might want to pick another one. Who knows? But that's what you're going to want to do. So I'm going to erase everything I just did here. You can go back and replay the video if you need to rewatch anything. But now that I know what X and Z is, oh, I forgot that Z is equal to 0. I erased too much. Let me put that back. Okay. Now that I know that Z equal to 0, X equals 4, now you just plug it in, right? Well, 2 times 4, right, equal, I guess I'll show that. 2 times, that's really 4 because X is 4, right? Use parentheses, by the way, when you're plugging stuff in. Minus 4y. We don't know what y is quite yet. Z is 0. I could say plus 0, but that's kind of redundant. But that's kind of, you know, what it would look like if I were to substitute everything in. Well, 2 times 4, you know, is really equal to 8. So now that reduces to 8 minus 4y plus 0. I'm not even going to say plus 0 because that's kind of not necessary, right? And of course, you got to get y by itself. So I'm going to do an inverse operation. That's going to cancel out. That's going to leave me with negative 4y equals a negative 8, because 0 minus 8 equals a negative 8. If I divide both sides by 4, which is my final step, I'm going to be left with y equals a positive 2. And I'll circle that so that kind of stands out. So here it is. I know it's a lot. That's why we're spending multiple days breaking it down, reminding you of what the elimination method is from just the 2, you know, variable examples. But that's what it looks like when you're doing the system with 3. Okay. Y equals 2, X equals 4, and Z equals 0. And also, can I just say this? Sometimes when you're doing like multiple choice exams, you're going to see the answer written in an ordered pair. So you just go like the alphabet, X, Y, Z. Okay. Just like you would end saying the alphabet song. So the X number answer comes first. X is 4. So I'm going to put 4 first. Y is 2. So I'm going to put that answer next. And then, of course, Z was the last one, X, Y, Z. So a lot of times you'll see your answers written in parentheses, like an ordered pair, 4, comma 2, comma 0. And that's how you would attack that. Okay. So really, you know, it's a long process. You really just need one good video to show you kind of the thought process, and go back and replay as much as you need to really get the hang of it. And then, of course, you learn by doing. You learn by doing. So before I end the video, I'm just about done with it because I really want to get straight to the point. We've done some of these in our tutoring sessions before, but this is the first time you've probably seen a video. Some of the examples, I mean, they can vary. For example, like on this one, before you can just add up stuff, you might have to do a multiplier, you might not. For example, on this particular one, example 6, I would probably go for, you can either try to cancel out or eliminate the X's. You just have to use a multiplier for that one. Or you might want to go for the Z's because, you know, the way that's already written, you can eliminate that one if you just did the first equation and the second equation, right? The only thing is, later you're going to have to pick one of those and add it to the third equation. You will have to use a multiplier on both if you do that, right? So sometimes it helps to really think that through. You may prefer to just target the X's on a problem like this. Go ahead and change this one by multiplying it by a multiplier, distributing -1 to all of the terms, right? And then, you know, using an easy multiplier with this one later. It's really up to you, but I'm just reminding you of that. Sometimes the problems will have easy eliminating variables the way they're already written. And then sometimes you have to use a multiplier to get them in a state where they will eliminate. Okay. So we've talked about this in tutoring, but I know it is a lot. So that's why we really wanted to do a recorded video, let you see it, go back and replay and see if you can, you know, catch kind of how I went from the beginning, part A to part B to part C, D, E, and kind of whittled it down to a point where I could figure out all 3 of the variables. Okay. So I have a homework assignment that you're going to do in lieu of our tutoring session. I'll give you that anyway, but watch this video. Obviously, if you've made it this far, you have, and this should be able to replay and help you as you go through the homework assignment. All right. I'll leave it on that note. Hope to see you next week on Tuesday as usual. Have a great weekend. Peace.